Hi, Becca.
Hello.
Thanks for meeting with me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we watched your lesson yesterday, and as I was reflecting about your lesson, there was a few things I wanted to take you and have you think about a little more, and then we can talk about how you think it went,
Okay.
so forth, so on. But before you do that, let's think about some of the things that you wanted me kind of to look at. So you wanted me to look at your language, and if you had all the features of shared reading.
Right.
So as I was thinking of that, I went to this page on 313, which you already have open. Awesome. Okay. And as I was reflecting on your lesson, I was going to ask you to do the same with me. Just kind of, let's read through these parts and see how you think it went.
So in the introduction, where it talks about like prompting children to make connections, a lot of them realized that the big book was the same book that they read in the smaller setting, so making that connection that they've seen it before, and they might know what to expect, and providing important information. I didn't do it so much about like the setting and the characters, but more about kind of the text
and
features.
And these are just kind of a few pointers of what you want maybe your introduction to have or have a focus on. But I did hear you in your introduction that you said we're going to read the story, and hopefully you can find a personal connection to the story.
Giving them kind of that purpose for why we're reading it as a big whole class.
Okay. And then in terms of modeling the reading of text, I took some notes on that. And you were just, reading with fluency, kind of using your finger, the pointer to read through it. And go ahead and just read this. I'm sorry, just read the description.
So definitely reading expressively while pointing. I paused in my reading, but to have them fill in that missing word that was on for the picture, which could sometimes mess with fluency of reading because then I'm like stopping. But I think in this activity it was okay to do that.
And now that I remember, there was one part where you actually during your lesson you talked about what the writer was doing. That did you notice that there was a picture here? Why do you think she did that?
Right.
So you had the kids thinking about it, and you pointed that structure out.
Yeah, because it's an important part of that book.
In terms of reading the text together, how do you think did the students surprise you in that, or?
Some of them did. I think they met the goal of having what I wanted them to do and to fill in that, like, just the word for the picture. But some of them were able to kind of read, like, the phrase, in the snow, which was on every page after the jacket, which I was actually shocked at that they kind of caught on and were reading that. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, and I saw that too. And you were right. They did chime in to those words that, that had a picture on it.
Right.
And I'm wondering if it was because you already pointed it out to them. So I made it very simple for them to read through it. And I'm glad that you noticed that they picked up after a while.
Yeah, there's definitely more.
And kind of that text lend itself to repeat, because it does repeat. So then students are listening to that kind of repetition. Discussing the text. So let's talk. Read through the description there. And then the opportunities for teaching and learning.
So I think when I was going into it, I wanted them to make like those personal connections in our discussion of the text, because it's a fairly simple book, and so we're not really looking at the character so much as what is happening and like the clothing that's going on and the repetition. And I felt like my discussion was a lot of me like pulling for answers to make those personal connections because they weren't really going in the direction that I wanted them to. Like how you bundle up to go out into the snow, and if anything's ever been caught in your zipper, like the character at the end. I felt like it was a lot of me forcing them to get where I wanted them to be in my discussion.
So what were some challenges that you saw your readers go through in that particular part of their reading, which is the meaning of the text?
Right. Well, I think my questioning was probably difficult maybe for some of them to understand, and maybe they might not have as many of those personal connections as I would have expected them. I don't know how many of them do that when they go out in the snow, so that might have been a reason why.
And I'm just going to read some of the notes I took when you said that. There was a part where you said, doesn't that make you think of, I don't have all of it here, but you said something about, doesn't it make you think of when it snows, what do you wear? And the kids were like, well, yeah, it does. But there was no like,
right, there was no extra added on thing.
No, I felt like no other student could even build on their thinking.
Right.
There was one part where you also said something like, and what do we wear to keep ourselves warm? And it was all, and then the kids were like, a coat. And it was all like one word answers.
Right.
So you're already kind of thinking about maybe extending that discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I wanted to take you into the continuum here this part right here. Discussing the meaning of the text, and then we'll go into the continuum because it has its own, like, because you, like you said, you can be expanding their thinking.
Right.
They can be thinking beyond and about the text. So we can think about how to choose those goals in a minute, but just read through this part, discussing the meaning of the text.
The last part about the repetitive text, playing with like the language, and maybe I could have talked about the use of the picture versus the word.
Okay.
And brought that into a discussion as well, because I talked about that a lot in my
right in your introduction to in your few stops that you had. So is that thinking beyond or about the text? Do you want to think about? You want to look at the continuum just to answer that question, just to double check. Because I always get those confused. Beyond, about. Just want to make sure that's clear in our minds. Page 75. What are some goals that you could have chosen to kind of expand your thinking?
Yeah, maybe getting there.
You can read through. You just read through.
I think I definitely could have had them talk about like making predictions as to what might happen on the next page or a few pages down the line, because the text was so repetitive. But talking about the text structure itself is very much like thinking about the text.
Okay. So this is your discussion after you've read it already. So you've read it already through, and you read it together. The kids listen to it fluently. Right. And at this point, you're kind of having them think about the meaning of the text. So there is one goal here that I saw that you wanted to target.
Right.
Express personal connections through discussion. Okay. So I felt like you wanted that, and that's a goal that helps kids think beyond the text. My question to you is, if you have a goal like that, make sure, or not make sure, but think about how that that goal is going to support your readers in reading of any text.
Right.
And then also think about what other, like you are right now, reflecting on what other goals can you choose to extend their thinking to think about the text. So in here, what goals did you see that you could, I don't remember if you said this already. The beginning, right there.
Yeah, the beginning.
Recognize and identify some aspects of this text structure, such as beginning and end.
Also, that like the author is the person who wrote the story. I talked a lot about that.
But just think about the first one right here. Recognize, identify some aspects of the structure, such as the beginning and end. What kinds of questions would that sound like to get the kids thinking about the beginning and the end?
Like what was the first thing the character put on in the beginning of the story, and then like what did he have on by the end of the story? So just kind of thinking about his clothing, and what happened at the beginning, and what happened at the end when he like finally went outside. So
let's think about this text. I know it's like, obviously it doesn't have an elaborate story, but thinking about this book, this is the jacket that I wear in the snow, right? So you're thinking about the first thing that you wear when you go outside.
Like the very first thing we always say is like, get your jackets, get your coats.
But something really important happens in the story.
Right.
So what happens at the end of the story?
Everything gets stuck, and Mom has to come do everything and take off all the clothes, and ties kind of back into that first thing, because the jacket was the first thing that was put on, and the last thing
and it starts to come off one by one again.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we have our kids think about aspects like this, we have to make sure that our language really and our questioning really supports that, gives them that chance to really, you're giving them that chance to look into that.
Right.
So let's kind of like role play right now, if you could, get the kids to think about the ending, because you had me think about the beginning. What's the first thing that they, what did you notice that the character put on first in the beginning?
Right. Okay. And then maybe asking them like, oh my goodness, at the end of the story, like bringing in maybe like the picture, like what do you notice the mom is doing? Like, what do you think happened? And maybe going back to this page and thinking about, okay, he put on all these things and it looks like she's taking everything off. Like, why would Mom be taking everything off the child or boy? Or I don't even know if it's a boy or a girl.
But even if, but you just said, what do you think happened here? And then you answered it, and you said, the mom is taking everything off. So are you giving them a chance to think about it?
No. So just stopping it as like, what do you think happened?
Oh, what do you notice?
What do you notice? Yeah.
And just letting them think about it.
Because if I give them the answer, then I'm just going to get one-word things, or they're just going to repeat.
Yeah, and then there's a reason why they put this goal here. So all of these goals have a purpose to build that reading process for those students, for the readers. So as you're discussing beginning and ending, how is that building your students' reading process?
Well, it's helping them to understand the story and also keep track of their thoughts, that a story has a beginning and an ending. And when they read, they know that they'll be reading. There's a beginning part to their story in any book, and an ending part to their story.
And many things can happen, right? Yeah. And we have to make sure that we are understanding the story, so we know why. And you can ask those questions, like, why is she taking it off in that way? Something that really helped me last year with my language and my questioning, because I honestly, sometimes I would be like, where do I get these questions from? There's this prompting guide that I'll take you into soon enough in our PD. Okay. But I thought you should look at it, and I can let you borrow it. You can come and take it anytime you want. But it's kind of, this one is prompting guide for comprehension, thinking and talk about writing. So it's kind of like you're thinking about the discussion of your book. So there's prompts for book discussions. Okay. There's some things that you can ask. There's also if you want them to be doing some making connections, there's, we can go to
Okay.
25 to see what the language might look like. And I'll let you look through it because it's new for me. I mean, it's new for you. And you'll see that.
So this is making connections.
Mm-hmm. And you want to read this part right here.
They use language that helps readers use what they know to help them understand new text.
Okay.
What does this remind you of?
Which I heard you say it a few times. But it's almost like, I heard you say this, but I heard you sometimes answering your own questions.
Yeah.
Right? There was one part where you were like, what do you wear? Well, when I get cold, I wear this.
Uh-huh.
And you
I do that.
You do that, yeah. But I think it's being comfortable with the silence and letting them, that wait time. Just letting them think about it. And look at this one.
Is the story organized like any other you've read?
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you read any books that repeated or repeated patterns?
Or even what you already know about snow or the winter in general.
Or being cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. What do you know about the situation at the end, tying that back to the beginning and
the
ending?
Beginning and ending goals. So, is there something that you think you can take away from this time with us together that will help you and shape your future shared reading lessons?
Yeah.
Maybe anything that you saw here or something that you just internally are feeling or reflecting on.
I think definitely the questions at the end, more so in that one you just showed me and the way I'm asking them and this comprehension. And making sure that I'm allowing my students to have time to answer those questions and not giving them the answer, but also guiding them to where I would like them to be. So that in selecting the books, making sure that what I'm selecting and what I want them to get from the shared reading is useful in everything else that they do. Because like talking about beginning and ending is useful when they go and read on their own. So really making sure to keep that in mind as I'm picking my shared reading books or poems or whatever I'm going to do for shared reading.
Okay. So I heard you say that you were going to focus on some questioning and your language around questioning. You might use this prompting guide to kind of help you guide your prompting or choose some good some language that will let them kind of open it up to them. You're going to also do a little bit of wait time, which is good. That's always good. I'm telling you, I struggle with it as well. But I think the prompting guide and the questions here really help. I like that you brought it back to selecting the book because as you noticed, when we went back, we really got to think about what the meaning of the story was and some important parts for us to stop at.
That's something I can think about if I do this again this week.
Yeah, and there's a lot of resources about selecting text for shared reading, and it's on page 310. I don't know if I want to write that down.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, 311. And that can help you think about, what kinds of books that you're selecting, which you kind of reflecting on that. That's important. There's a link to your goals and to that book selection. So I'll write those down and then, keep doing what you're doing. Don't give up.
Perfect. The kids love that story.
Yeah, it is fun. It is a fun story. Thank you.